ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the NFL Goal Line. I'm Phil Nunziata. With me, as always, is Nick Rice. We have a lot to get to after this week in the NFL. Are the 49ers making the right call by starting Kaepernick over Alex Smith? What will the injuries mean to the Washington Redskins' playoff hopes? And even in a win, why is there not a lot of hope in the Jets by the end of the season? All this and more on NFL Goal Line.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. Thank you for making us part of your day. We are broadcasting live here on Spreaker.com in affiliation with National Sports Radio Station. This is Nick Rice along with Phil Nunziata. Let's not waste any time. Phil, Monday Night Football update every day at this time. What do you have for us?
Well, Nick, first I got to say it's good to be back. I've been gone for a few weeks, and I'm glad to be back, and I missed being on the show. So we're going to get right back into it on the Monday night matchup between the New England Patriots and the Houston Texans. Been all Patriots so far. There's about 18 seconds left in the half, and the Patriots are up 21-0.
Phil Nunziata, glad to have you back, co-host here on the NFL Goal Line. Thank you guys for joining us as well. We hope to have a very entertaining show. Our call-in number is 951-515-4552. Catch us also on Facebook, NFL Goal Line with Nick and Phil, also on Twitter with the same description there. Our links are below for both Twitter and Facebook. Make sure to catch us also on Facebook.com. Thank you guys for joining us. Also, 951-515-4552 is our call-in number. We have Cameron Sadeghi at half past the hour, and we hope to have a very entertaining show here. Houston Texans, 21-0 deficit already in a very intriguing game going in. And right off the bat, their key was the ground and pound. And I thought that the Texans had a very sizable advantage at the tight end position. They have two really good tight ends. I'm not speaking of New England. They have great tight ends as well. But the Patriots do not match up well against two tight end sets. And they have just shut down this Houston passing game. Matt Schaub under 50% completions, also an interception. I don't want to point out how bad Houston is because New England has a lot more to play for as well. The Texans just need one win to wrap up that number one seed. But how surprised are you, Phil? Already, we're heading to halftime here, 10 seconds remaining. Yes, indeed, it's halftime. 21-0. Your thoughts on a very abysmal first half for the Houston offense?
Well, you look at the score, and it's obvious that it has been all New England. But when you look at the numbers, the offenses have been relatively even. The difference is the Patriots have converted their drives into points, whereas Houston has not. Matt Schaub has 159 yards passing. Brady has 165. So there's only a 6-yard difference in passing yards. The main difference is Schaub has 1 pick to no touchdowns. Brady has no picks to 3 touchdowns. Arian Foster only has 35 yards on the ground with 11 carries. As you said, they love to ground and pound the football. Have not really had a lot of success there. And the Patriots, with the combination of Steve Vernon and Danny Woodhead, only have about 40 yards in their own right. So the offensive yardage has been similar. The only difference is the Patriots are converting into points.
21-0 New England. This is the top offense in the National Football League coming onto the scene yet again. We'll have to wait and see how Houston responds in the second half in Gillette Stadium. Houston Texans go into this one 11-1, and the New England Patriots at 9-3 on the year. Another very dominant team that really had a surprise in the first half, unable to close it out late. It was a game between the Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. Final 30-20 Carolina, and it wasn't even all that close, partner, as the Falcons, since the start offensively, could not find any rhythm. Matt Ryan statistically actually played relatively well in this game, but what I've said all year is that this team cannot find ways to play solid rush defense and also run the football. It's a very one-dimensional team. I mentioned it a few weeks ago in a Week 8 edition of NFL Goal Line, how the Falcons are not as good as people think. Take a listen. Here's my mid-season power rankings starting out at number 5. And this is a big surprise to a lot of Atlanta fans, but I do not have the undefeated Falcons any higher than number 5 for this reason. And this reason alone, I am not the biggest fan of their defense. They are giving up 144 yards on the ground per game, along with a very inconsistent front seven that's showing signs of weakness against inferior teams. And this was when they were 8-0 on the year. And now this team has seemingly fell apart. They did have a very impressive win against the Saints. Phil, this was your thoughts to my top 5 power rankings. Just want to throw this out here. Nothing bagging on you, Phil. Here's what you said.
Oh, overall, I'd agree with your list. I mean, I personally would put Atlanta a little bit higher just to show respect for the record that they do have. And, no, they haven't been blowing teams out of the water. But, I feel they're battle-tested. I feel they know how to win the close game.
Well, they're set for the playoffs, but can I say I told you so? Phil, I don't know exactly how this team will match up down the stretch, and it's all about the postseason. But if we're just matching up December here, this team has fallen apart. And if I'm a betting man, Phil, I wouldn't bet on the Atlanta Falcons in January against tough teams on the road, such as the Giants, Packers, maybe even the Niners try to make their bid into the first-round playoff bye.
Well, it's a game of momentum. Professional football at least always has been. You look at this game, it was just one they got away from. It's a division rival. Whenever you play a team in the division, they play you twice a year. They see you twice a year, so they're going to know what you're good and not good at. You talked about them not being able to stop the run. I think that was put on perspective as Cam Newton late in the third quarter had a 72-yard touchdown run, and the Falcons at that point were in a 23-0 hole. Did start to get a little bit of a comeback there. They brought it to within 10 by the end of the game, 20-30, but as you said, it was not even that close. The Falcons definitely have some problems here now. They're still 11-2, still got the best record in the NFC. They do have time to turn it around, but the Falcons are a prime example of one of those teams. It's better to start getting hot towards the end of the year than to come out the gate swinging.
And at one point, you mentioned in that game, it was 23-0. The Panthers outgaining the Atlanta Falcons 356-86 total yardage in that matchup. And I just want to mention that you said that a division rival plays you very well, and I also go by that mantra. But 58-0 Seattle over Arizona. I just want to mention it isn't a done deal when you're playing a division opponent. They are still, the Carolina Panthers are, a very struggling football team that might not even have his head coach after this year in Ron Rivera. Overall, Atlanta is really, after coming out of the gates, they have really struggled. And they are also at 11-2. Not even a lock for the number 1 seed. They still have to win some games. Obviously, their schedule, they're able to win a few games. They're down the stretch. Just reading off their remaining schedule, and obviously this offense can get it done. And the defenses that they're going up against are obviously teams that have weaknesses. They play the Detroit Lions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the New York Giants to close out the year. 2 out of 3 of those games also at home. They just need to win one game to wrap up the number 1 seed in the NFC. But going down the stretch, Atlanta, with not even being able to really contain Carolina, I'm concerned on how this team can match up down the stretch. Reading off that schedule, Phil, is this team going into the postseason perhaps on a downward spiral already last year, one and done in the playoffs? Is this a different Atlanta team that shows weakness down the stretch?
Well, as you said, they don't have much to do to wrap up that number 1 seed. They have a difficult game. The Buccaneers is another division game, so we all know what can happen there. The Giants could definitely be a test. Here's a team. They're not going to have them win them they had at the beginning of the year. But, if they can, settle in, at the number 1 seed, have the first round bye, collect themselves, anything can happen. Even if momentum is not on their side, they might position themselves to kind of fly under the radar, but at the same time be a first round bye team, which does not happen very often. But if you're able to make people, underestimate you thinking, oh, they're not as good as they were in the beginning of the year, that's a pretty good situation to be in my opinion.
And Atlanta still, obviously, Phil, really high on Atlanta. even down the stretch here. You can catch Phil Nunziata at PhillyBoy386 on Twitter as well. Also, make sure to follow Facebook for our weekly Facebook question. We might have this Atlanta team. How far will they go in the playoffs? We'll hopefully get some feedback for next week's show. Also, another team that's really rolling right now as of late in the NFC, Dallas Cowboys 20-19 marginal victory, playing with heavy hearts, coming just one day after the loss of Dallas defensive practice squad player. Obviously, this is a very heavy-hearted situation, and you got to feel for just 24 hours later coming out on top in a very emotional season for the Dallas Cowboys. And Phil, just real quick on this topic, and I don't know if so much the game was the headline here, but overall as an organization, the National Football League, putting you on the spot here, do you believe that this comes 6 days following the Kansas City Chiefs' Devon Belcher also committing suicide as well? We mentioned last year Junior Seau, suicide, taking a shot to the head as well. I mean, we've just seen time after time, Des Bryant, countless DUI, also run-ins with the law. Is this a situation that the National Football League as an organization can even take control of? As the Dallas Cowboys were able to rally as a team, but just these certain individuals, are they able to be contained, or is this a situation that's far above what the league can manage?
Well, as passionate as we are about, the sport of football, that's the reason we are here. That's the reason that people are listening to us speak right now. There's been multiple situations over, I'd say, the past, definitely this year, but, including Junior Seau. It really puts football into perspective. This past week with the game against Cincinnati is proof that, it's just a game. There are more important things. Kansas City's game last week is proof, earlier in the year when Andy Reid, Eagles head coach, lost his son. It's just those situations where, as much as we love it, it is a game, and there's been a lot of situations this year that put football into perspective. So definitely a very emotional game for the Cowboys. The score won't necessarily always be remembered. People aren't going to remember that Tony Romo had, 268 yards in this game, and they played, rather well and beat a very good Bengals team, a team that went to the playoffs last year. But it's just one of the situations where, football's put into perspective, but it's their job. They had to go out and do it, and, they were able to carry around, Larry Brown's jersey after the game, with a win. And, far be it for me to speak well of the Cowboys, but, they did him proud, and I got to say, it was definitely an emotional moment for anyone watching.
Emotional moment, but if you're watching the game, especially down the stretch, Cincinnati had a lead nearly the whole football game. In the red zone, this team was atrocious, couldn't find the end zone, dropped passes, a dropped interception on a 2-minute drill as Dallas was trailing 19-17. Total of 3 dropped INTs on the day, countless penalties for Cincinnati. Real quick to this game, was this more Dallas pulling it out on a tough win where it's been a long and hard year for Jason Garrett, or was this a scenario where Cincinnati, in a game that they really should have had at home, let one slip away in a season that really has had its fair share of miscues, especially after a 3-6 Cincinnati start?
Yeah, I mean, both these teams, after this game, they're sitting at, 7-6. Can have, blow leads or have atrocious red zone trips, as you said. Both these teams, I feel, are almost exactly the same. They have a quarterback. They know how good he can be. They have weapons on the outside. They have, running backs that can get it done. Both these teams, I feel, are in the same boat, and it's only a matter of time to see if either one or both will eventually make the playoffs.
And looking at the overall NFC East, currently it would be the New York Giants, 8-5 on the year. All, as we mentioned before the broadcast, every team in the NFC East, I want to quote Phil on this, won in Week 14. And that was the first time that all 4 of these teams won in this division in the past 4 years. 2008 was the last time. And now, after every team winning, Philadelphia is out of that race. It's a 3-headed race with the New York Giants facing a very tough final 3 games, and the Dallas Cowboys, Washington Redskins, both those teams at 7-6, still have one final meeting against each other. Out of these final 3 games, New York also struggling as of late. I don't know if I want to put any bets on any particular team. Now, New York really blew the door out of the water over the New Orleans Saints. Outside of that game, it's been a really tough year for New York as they have been extremely inconsistent. Who do you have in this NFC East that really could go any way, just like every single year, seemingly, in this division?
Well, I'm with you. I don't think I'm putting money on any of these teams. The Giants, they're able to come out good this week, but how long, you don't expect them to hang 50 on a team very often. You got the Cowboys that are playing well, but they've been playing well off and on all year, and for the past couple of years, you can never really put them in the situation, aside from a player or two, you might go with Washington, but now RG3 has an injury, and you don't know how. There's word that he might play, but it will limit his mobility, which, in turn limits the Redskins' offense. How could they play with Kirk Cousins if he had to, he's seen a decent amount of time for injuries for RG3 in the past this year, but that's another team. There's a lot of question marks about all 3 of these teams, and these last 3 weeks will really show a lot about which team makes the playoffs.
Currently, New York Giants 8-5 on the year. Their final 3 games, I mentioned, extremely difficult. On the road to take on the Atlanta Falcons, they're looking to bounce back at home, where they have not lost in that stadium just once all year. Then the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, and then a home visit with the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that really is trying to rally over Andy Reid in their final few games. Taking a look at the Washington Redskins' remaining schedule. On the road to take on the Cleveland Browns, then the Philadelphia Eagles, and home against Dallas. Perhaps the most easy schedule of any team in this division. And as for the Dallas Cowboys, a gutsy win against the Cincinnati Bengals. Then it's home to take on the Steelers. They're trying to make a playoff push. Home against the New Orleans Saints in their last push for the playoffs for that Saints squad. And then on the road to take on the Washington Redskins as well. Overall, Washington has the easiest schedule. New York Giants have a 1-game lead. And Dallas, I don't want to bet on that team making the postseason, where they have really struggled against easy teams and have very key issues on the defensive side of the ball. Overall, I can't really bet on any team, but if I'm using my gut, Phil, I don't know who you're taking, reading off that schedule. Just with the 1-game lead, I believe New York is able to gut it out down the stretch, and if Washington can win out at 10-6 with a struggling Chicago Bears team that has lost 4 out of 5, who knows? Maybe the Washington Redskins can get a wild card spot at 10-6. Phil, what's your gut feeling?
Again, much like you, I can't put a lot of merit in any of these teams, but considering at the moment they have the most momentum, the Redskins winning 4 straight, and, beating the Ravens, which, led to something that we're going to get to in a little bit, and having the easiest schedule. I think a combination of those 3 things, are they the best team in the division? Not necessarily, but the way things are shaping up, maybe they luck out and get in with the combination of the schedule, and again, momentum holds a lot into these late games in the year. So, if I'm just going with my gut without really any backing behind it, I'll go with Washington.
Obviously, Washington is mourning the loss of their quarterback. Hopefully, he'll be back next week for Washington Redskin fans. We'll have an injury update after our commercial break. We'll take a quick 30-second timeout. They'll be right back. Also, Cameron Sadeki set to join us just 12 minutes from now. And we are back to football on the Monday night matchup between the Patriots and the Texans. All this and more coming up on NFL Goal Line with Nick and Phil. Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator Cam Cameron is fired following the Redskin loss in Washington. What significance does this have for a Baltimore team set for the postseason? NFL Goal Line rolls on. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the NFL Goal Line on Spreaker.com, in affiliation with National Sports. We are back here live, and obviously, we're just taking a look at the NFC playoff picture here. Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata here on Spreaker.com. Also, check in with our call-in number. We're hoping to get some sort of fan feedback as well. Call-in number 951-515-4552. Texts, calls, anything that it takes to get your thoughts across. Facebook and Twitter is also live as well. We're checking in on those sites as well. We'll also take a look at our weekly Facebook fan poll feedback, as we'll get to that later on in the broadcast. We've been taking a look at this NFC playoff picture, and we believe that Washington might make a push for the playoffs. And you speak about a December run, trying to get your best football as of late. Ask Chicago, who missed the playoffs last year due to injury at the quarterback position. Jay Cutler, also Matt Forte was out for that team. Now they bring in Brandon Marshall, and they tried to bolster that offense. But it's been a side of the football that has been unable to produce any points, especially in their final 5 games right now, losing 4 out of 5. They might just lose this playoff number 6 seed at the moment right now, as right now they don't even hold the tiebreaker over the Seattle Seahawks. And they are just 1 game ahead of the Washington Redskins, Johnny on the spot on their tail at 7-6 on the year. And speaking of a team that has really rallied as of late, I have not seen a team that right now at 8-5 for Seattle, I have not seen a team progress in the last 2 months as well as the Seattle Seahawks have. And I've really been impressed on how this team has been able to rally around their rookie quarterback in Russell Wilson and really produce on the offensive side of the ball. This was a 4th-round draft pick. What a story for Russell Wilson. 5'11.5", his stature. No one predicted him to be one of these elite quarterbacks that this team can really depend on. Phil, what to make of Seattle now at 8-5 after a 58-0 shellacking? We'll get to Arizona's side in just a moment here. But Pete Carroll rubbing it in with a football team that really is guns a-blazing for the postseason.
Well, people look at this game and they see the score, 58-0. Oh, this team must have really ran the score up. But anyone that really watched this game knows that they definitely didn't. That was not the case at all. Anyone that looks at this game, that watched this game, just look at the stats. Russell Wilson had under 150 yards passing. They're not running the score up. This isn't the New England Patriots, winning 59-0 against Tennessee Titans, who are doing, play action passes deep in the 4th quarter, in their own territory, trying to run the score up. Here's a team, look at the way they scored these points in this game. 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground, so they're obviously not trying to, push the ball. They're just running, and it's Arizona's fault for not being able to stop them, quite frankly. 4 interceptions thrown by Arizona. They had a fumble recovery in the end zone. They had a pick 6. And the rest were on the ground. They had 1 touchdown through the air. So I really didn't care much for the, people saying that Pete Carroll was running the score up. What do you want him to do? Kneel the ball 3 times and punt? He can only control one team, and he controlled his team very well. The team they played against, not so well. I don't blame Pete Carroll at all for letting this happen.
Well, this is also a coach that also has a mindset of make sure to play until the final gun, the final whistle. This is a team that has really progressed in the last 2 months of the year. And it speaks words to a team that just last year, unable to make the playoffs. Their offense was one of the worst in the National Football League. And overall, just this team has really progressed in the last 2 months. And going over to Arizona's side real quick, you got to feel for a front office and a management that has for years tried to not only draft talent, they take Patrick Peterson, hoping that he'll evolve into that defensive player that can help that side of the ball, but they have gotten some free agent acquisitions on that side. Could not do anything on the defensive side, and offensively, same story there. Just not the quarterback that they're looking for. You feel bad for Larry Fitzgerald, who has only 1 year had an elite quarterback. That was Kurt Warner. I mean, for this team, and also I'm going to a head coach that following the game apologized to the fans and to all the supporters for this team unable to prevent such an embarrassing performance. Just real quick to Arizona, what a season that has started off so hot and now at 4-9, 9-game losing streak. Many people talk about San Diego having their coach and having management sort of clean house. What to make of Arizona now at 4-9? Seattle's a great team, but Arizona, are they really this bad?
Well, it's crazy to think that this was a team at one point that was 4-0, and I don't think either of us were buying that at the time anyway. But just the fact this team was 4-0 at one point, and that stadium can get rocking when the team's doing pretty well. My Eagles are one of the teams that fell victim to that 4-0 start, as they got crushed on that day. But here's a team. Yes, to be quite frankly, I think they are that bad. Here's a team. They don't even know who their quarterback is. Kevin Cobb's getting all the money, but then John Skelton will give them the production sometimes, and then Ryan Lindley's in there because somebody's hurt. This team is just a mess, a revolving door at almost any position that matters, aside from Larry Fitzgerald, which, he's had a lot of loyalty in the past for this team, but, how could you really blame him if you wanted to head somewhere else once his contract ups, whenever that may be? But, here's a team, yes, I got to say they are that bad, and I don't see it getting any better for them anytime soon.
You got to feel for the management, supporters, fans, anyone that has really been a part of this Arizona ride. 4-0 start, very impressive. There was talk about this team making the postseason. Now, a lot of people that really had their head on straight, that are real experts, would have completely denied that start. It's just a very hot team that has had a few early bounces go their way, and a very hot quarterback that turned freezing cold in a matter of seconds. Now at 4-9, Arizona, a really rough season, perhaps as rough of a season as I've seen in a while, and it has been rough, certainly for teams like New Orleans as well. What to make of a team that is currently out of the playoffs, completely shellacked by the Giants. I mean, just so many stories, but Arizona is certainly the bottom of the crop in that category. But we head back to Seattle just real quick here. We're waiting for Cameron Sadeghi to join us. Is Seattle a team that can be more than just a one-and-done team? As this offense has clicked as of late, and that's the key seemingly in the NFL. That's what gets the tickets. The offensive production, certainly passing production. But Russell Wilson has relied on receivers that not many people have really heard of. Golden Tate is his leading receiver, and also no one even knows of their tight end as well. Zach Miller is the leading tight end target there for that team. Is Seattle more than just a one-and-done team? Despite a collapse, they are set for the postseason at 8-5. Very easy remaining schedule. And also, I want to go real quick into this. Hopefully Cameron is a few minutes late here. Seattle has an extremely easy schedule, and San Francisco, just one game up on the Seattle Seahawks, have an extremely difficult schedule. As the Niners, just in Week 15, they have to go to New England, who are leading 21-0, by the way, in this game, Monday Night Football. Seattle is in Toronto to take on the Bills. Week 16, the Niners and the Seahawks face off in Quest Field. There's home field advantage, and then there's Seattle's home field advantage. After that game, Seattle could be the leader in the NFC West going into Week 17. Phil, what to make of the Seattle Seahawks, and if the Niners can't even wrap up this division that everyone believed was all theirs from the get-go?
Well, I definitely think, first off, that the Niners are going to wrap up that division. I think that's something we're going to get to in a little bit. We're going to talk Niners football once Cameron joins us. But as far as Seattle goes, I do think they're going to make the playoffs. They're 8-5 now. As I said, they have an easy schedule. And as far as their success in the playoffs goes, they have what I call a puncher's chance, which is they have as good a chance as anybody to beat anybody on any given night. This isn't, NBA playoffs. This isn't MLB playoffs. You don't play these teams in a series. You play them on one night, and you see who is better on that one night. And here's a team that has beaten Green Bay in a game that's drenched in controversy, of course, their replacement refs. But even if you take that out of there, they've beaten New England, and they've beaten Green Bay. They've beaten some of the better teams in the league. They have as good a chance as anybody to beat anybody on any given night. And lucky for them, that's how football's playoffs are done.
San Francisco 9-3-1, their current record, and the Seattle Seahawks 8-5. Right now, if the playoffs were to start this very instant, the Niners would wrap up that first round of playoff bye, and the Seattle Seahawks would be the number 1 wild card team in the NFC. And let's go real quick just to the very intriguing final matchup here. Also, I mentioned that a very easy schedule for the Seahawks. They also face the Rams in the final week of the year. Meanwhile, San Francisco faces the Cardinals. You never know against this very intriguing division. Either way, both teams, I think we can put our hat on these two franchises making the playoffs for this year. And Cameron Sadeghi going on any moment. We'll talk about Colin Kaepernick and Alex Smith. Who should really be the starting quarterback? Colin Kaepernick has really helped out this team as of late. I believe that he's the man, not only of the future, but of the man right now. This team is set for the playoffs. The difference between Russell Wilson and the Niners' Colin Kaepernick is that Kaepernick doesn't have as many games under his belt as the Seattle's Russell Wilson has, as he has had a whole year to prepare for what should be a wild ride in the postseason. Cameron Sadeghi, love to have him on the show. He has been obviously very busy these last few weeks. But Cameron, glad to have you join us on a very entertaining Week 14 in the National Football League. Let's go straight into the hot topic right now for Cameron, as Colin Kaepernick is the starting quarterback. He's been the starter ever since San Francisco had to face the injury to Alex Smith. And frankly, partner, you don't believe that Colin Kaepernick should be the lead man under center despite a very healthy Alex Smith that has rallied this team a couple fumbles away from the Super Bowl last year. Cameron, glad you can join us.
Thank you very much. I personally think that Alex Smith has been really thrown into the dust here. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me how when your season is rolling perfectly and this is your Super Bowl year and everything's in the right direction, you decide to make a change with a little bit of an inexperienced quarterback because you feel as if he has a better athletic dynamic that you really don't necessarily need in your offense when it's already high-powered and high-scoring. I've never seen a quarterback in my entire life, whether it's Pee-wee football, high school football, have the third best quarterback rating in its entire group of quarterbacks in the league, and absolutely gets yanked out of a game. I'm just stunned here. I feel as if Alex Smith has done nothing wrong. He's actually been a big plus to the offense because he helps them in the short and intermediate passing game more than I believe Kaepernick does. I think the only two things, I mean, they're big things, but still, I think the only two things that Kaepernick has a slight advantage over Alex Smith is the deep passing game, and, well, not a slight advantage for this one, but his ability to run outside of the pocket. I understand they want to bring an athletic dynamic, but I'm sticking with the experienced guy. I don't want to put my inexperienced quarterback under pressure and put him under the fire. I just really think it would be unfair for. I think this is going to hurt the Niners in the long run. I actually don't think they're winning the Super Bowl just because of Smith not being there as the starter.
And obviously, Cameron Sadeghi, glad you can join us. He is also weekly on the Cameron Sadeghi Show on Spreaker.com, affiliation with National Sports. Glad you can join us. Colin Kaepernick plugged into the starting lineup, and me and Phil are sound on this. Obviously, Alex Smith, as you mentioned, has done nothing really wrong, and that injury was obviously at him trying to run with the football and just making a little too much happen. But why I believe that Colin Kaepernick really is still the man for the San Francisco 49ers, you mentioned he's a big athletic guy. He's, no question, a bigger, stronger athlete than Alex Smith. But what I have with Colin Kaepernick is he is a big, tough guy that can run the football, converting third downs. Everyone wants to blame Kyle Williams with the 2 fumbles in the NFC Championship game. This team went 1 for 13 on third down in the NFC Championship game. And obviously, Colin Kaepernick can make that make the difference on third down. He's a more dangerous quarterback on that money down. You want to know why the Steelers are so tremendous on third down? They are the number one team converting the third down. It's because Ben Roethlisberger can make the plays with his feet. A similar stature, huge, big-body quarterback that can move. And obviously, the Niners have that similar dangerous threat. And I believe that Colin can convert the third downs that Alex Smith can't. And also, just real quick here, the passing offense was absolutely atrocious with Alex Smith in this game. As before he suffered the injury, this passing offense was sixth worst in the league, Cameron, behind the Jaguars and the Bills. They've improved under Colin Kaepernick. That frankly, Niners win double-digit 27-13 victory over Miami. Everyone's questioning the offense. I believe Alex Smith might have struggled more than this Colin Kaepernick kid that's really getting his niche right now, Cameron.
Can I just say something real quickly?
Yeah.
You bring up the NFC Championship point, and look, I understand that, but I mean, let's face it. No matter what great quarterback it is, when you're in a championship type of game in a setting like that, and it was a rainy, slow surface type of day, as you know, a candlestick, when weather like that occurs, it's slow for wide receivers, and they struggle with their cuts. And I don't. It's just hard for me to say that because that Kaepernick should stay in there, because I have a feeling that Kaepernick might make a big mistake. I mean, we saw it in St. Louis with the pitch, and I know some people may say, oh, that's not that big of a deal. It was in St. Louis. It was a pitch. Who cares? But they lost that game because Kaepernick, tried to throw a pitch back to Ted Ginn, couldn't get it there, and fumbled for a touchdown. Rams are back in it, and they win by the foot of Greg Zuerlein. So, yeah, I know it doesn't look pretty. It doesn't look that great, but San Francisco doesn't need pretty, doesn't need the luxury. They need wins. That's all they care about. They care about that big goal at hand, and I feel like Alex Smith will turn it over less, rather if he was put in than what Colin Kaepernick might do in the playoffs this year.
Well, Cameron, I'm agreeing with, I'd say, half of what you're saying. I agree that Alex Smith did not do anything to lose his job. I think he was doing exactly what was asked of him at the time. The only thing he did wrong was not sliding while taking off for that run and, putting his back to a defensive player, which I don't know in what right mind you would think to do that. But with Kaepernick in the game, it just gives you another element. You talk about, being able to make plays with his feet. Here's a team that were only up by a few points against the Dolphins. How did they bust this game wide open deep in the fourth quarter? Colin Kaepernick, 50-yard touchdown run. You're not going to see that from Alex Smith. It's just an extra dimension to this team. You've already agreed. He's got the deep pass involved, a lot more, with guys that need that deep passing threat. Alex Smith, you can almost compare it to, not comparing Kaepernick to Tom Brady, but was Drew Bledsoe doing anything wrong necessarily when he got injured? No, it's that when Tom Brady got into those games with the Patriots, he took the ball and ran with it. Kaepernick, I think he is the quarterback of the future. I think we all are aware of that. So, here's a guy, they're giving it to him now. Is it a little bit early? Maybe, but maybe it's just baptism under fire. Here's a guy I just really think is going to be the future of this team. Alex Smith, his ceiling is nowhere near as high as Kaepernick's, and I think that's what Harbaugh was looking at here. And it will be interesting to see what happens with Alex Smith. I agree he did not do anything to lose his job, but I feel Kaepernick, when given the opportunity, did enough things right to win the job.
And obviously, this is a debate that can go very much farther. And Jim Harbaugh, in a way, you don't want to question a guy that has won at every level in football. And now this Niners team is seemingly set for yet another run for the Super Bowl. Another team that really has a Harbaugh-led team that has somewhat gone under fire as of late for their decisions. Cameron, you have more on this. Cam Cameron, the offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens, a very intriguing mid-season type of acquisition here. They dump Cam Cameron from his duties, and now it's up to a new man to take care of the offensive duties. Cameron, your thoughts on what was a very intriguing move for Baltimore so late in the year?
Yeah, I'm a little bit stunned, to be quite honest. And yes, I know they got, Jim Caldwell, the former Colts head coach, to step in there, but I'm just surprised that, to me, this Ravens team, their offense has actually improved, in my opinion. I love the new hurry up offense that Cam Cameron implemented. I mean, they scored 28 against Washington on the road, and excuse me, and they to me, they've seemed to improve every single year on offense. Flacco has progressed, and it just surprised me, and to do it this late in the year. I mean, look, I can understand, and Otis Smith knows way more football than I would ever imagine in that Ravens front office, but they gotta understand that maybe it's just a little too late in the season, right when you're going to go in the playoffs. How are you going to put in that new offense that Caldwell will run, and how are these guys going to adjust? I mean, what happens if in the fourth quarter of a key game in the playoffs they need to make a play, but there's a miscommunication error because that play, they haven't been running it that much in practice, or the receiver may not know his particular route. I mean, it just seems so hard for these guys to adjust. I feel like the Ravens have taken a step back, and unfortunately, it just, every time I think, hey, the Ravens, I'm going to see them in the Super Bowl, or, they've really got a shot. If they just crumble, I don't know why, but they just, I know it sounds obvious, but they don't make enough plays, or they don't make enough decisions to get there. And unfortunately, I think this is one where you can kind of detract from their progress. And to me, it's just mind-boggling why they do this late in the season.
From a few sources on NFL.com, Cam Cameron was apparently not surprised by the Ravens' decision. This might be a similar situation to what we just mentioned earlier, Colin Kaepernick being starting over the relieved Alex Smith. It might be a very questionable midseason decision, but it might be a decision that's a lot more underlying than what we give credit for. We're not there between the huddles. We're not there on the weekly practice and the practice fields and in the meetings. This might be more than just an offense that put up 28 points last week. Right now, Baltimore started 9-2, 2-game losing streak. Cam Cameron relieved of his duties. Cameron, real quick, is Baltimore set for a run in the postseason? Is this a team that can get back to that championship game with perhaps another meeting against the Patriots, or a very dominant team that can win in the postseason? Is this team, with injuries also on the defensive side, how significant was this a loss at the offensive coordinator position? And are they set for a postseason run?
I think they'll still make a postseason run, but I just worry again for Baltimore. I mean, especially with no Darius Webb, no Ray Lewis. You could see, this defense got gashed yesterday during key critical points in yesterday's game. Not just that, but then, the offense, I don't know, because all these, championship-type games that the Ravens get into, when it's a grind and it's a bloodbath, it comes down to one, a few offensive plays, and I don't know how quickly they can adjust. I respect what Ravens GM Otis Smith has done, because he is by far one of the best GMs in the NFL, and he should be respected for that. But I don't know if this is good. To me, I would have not been mad at Otis Smith's decision if he had done it after the season. But doing it now kind of sets your team back, and I just wonder if the Ravens will make it to the Super Bowl, especially with the losses of Darius Webb and Ray Lewis.
Obviously, in this game, Ravens couldn't pull it out in overtime. For Washington's side, Robert Griffin late in the fourth quarter with a very scary. This is 1 millimeter away from being an being a ACL tear out for the year. Robert Griffin on a diving attempt trying to slide actually to stop his forward progress on a scramble late in the fourth quarter. With the Redskins trying to make a rally. They put in Kirk Cousins. But the injury extent for Robert Griffin, he should be set to play next week, as he was also limped off the field. He played sparingly for the final few minutes of the fourth quarter. The injury might just be more than this week, or it might just be more than the next few weeks. The significance, Cameron, real quick for Washington, 7-6, trying to battle for the playoff spot. We mentioned earlier this might be the easiest schedule remaining for the Redskins of any team in the NFC East. Is this a playoff team, even if the rookie quarterback Kirk Cousins is plugged into the lineup this Sunday?
Yeah, I honestly think so, and because that NFC East is just wild. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants maybe lose two more. I mean, it's gotten to that point. But, I think Kirk Cousins really showed his potential yesterday with those key critical throws down the stretch. I was really surprised that Kirk Cousins can come in like that, and with the season on the line, against a tough Baltimore team, and make those big throws. I think this guy will be a nice reliever, a nice replacement, just for the time being. If so, we don't know really. I saw that RG3, might be able to play, like you said, on LA Times, so on LATimes.com. So, yeah, I think, to be honest, I think this team will make the playoffs. But, it's so unfortunate for RG3 because I really like the way he plays. It's very entertaining. But every single week he puts himself in danger just by the way and the style that he plays as a quarterback.
New England 28-7 over the Houston Texans in a Monday Night Football battle midway through the third quarter. Final 30 seconds here, Cameron. What have you seen in this Monday night game where New England has really blown over the door that we expected the Texans to really handle over this Patriots squad? What have you really seen in this matchup, Cameron?
I think it's just more of a Houston letdown than New England playing great football. I mean, I respect the way New England's been playing, but Houston, you could see they are not putting, they are really dog-tired out there, and you could see, I mean, they're biting on every single play action Tom Brady is doing, and look, I think Houston really doesn't need this game as much as New England does also, so just another point, but I'm not really too surprised, but I think it was more of a Houston letdown.
Cameron Sadeghi, always appreciative of joining us here, NFL analyst on Spreaker.com. Catch him also on the Cameron Sadeghi Show here weekly on Spreaker.com. And obviously, Cameron, very intriguing thoughts. Glad to have you on this show, and hopefully we'll see you later on. Thank you, Cameron, for joining us. And yeah, he mentioned it. Robert Griffin, an extremely rare talent in the National Football League. But just the fact that he sets his body up, he's a very small quarterback, 6 foot, barely over 200. A very small quarterback that just in this pro game with all this violence, I don't believe that Robert Griffin, in the next few years, he might have the same kind of injury up and down seasons that Michael Vick has had. Phil, you know plenty of that. We'll take a quick 30-second break here. We'll be right back on the NFL goal line, wrapping up on Monday Night Football, where the Houston Texans, what to make of that team. More on the Texans debacle next. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to NFL goal line. Real quick Monday Night Football update. Patriots over the Texans 28-7 in a shellacking that Houston finally cracks the scoreboard in the third quarter. We'll keep track of that. Texans trying to rally kind of it's been a very surprising game, and also a very surprising season for the New York Jets. 17-10 over Jacksonville at 4-7. No one gave this team credit for the postseason, and just looking off the schedule, the easiest as far as winning percentages go for any team in the final 3 games and in the final 5 games, where this team could perhaps run the table, end at 9-7, and make the postseason. Very likely for a team that wins ugly, but just completely took control of the St. Louis Rams earlier in the year, took control of the Indianapolis Colts. Mind, those teams were at home. But this team has some talent on the offensive side, not at the quarterback position, but overall for this team, what to make of a squad that, barring a letdown against easy teams, this squad is set for a run into the playoffs, perhaps one and done, but set for the postseason.
Yeah, I think Cameron, brought up a good point. This game doesn't mean as much for the Texans as, say, the Patriots, but it's kind of a recurring theme every game that they have, hype up, against the Packers. They got smacked around. They're getting smacked around in this game. I think the Texans definitely need to start playing up to their ability and, start looking as good against these good teams as everyone thinks they are.
Absolutely. The Houston Texans blown out of the door right now, and they also lost big-time fashion against the Green Bay Packers as well. And the New York Jets, they have really rallied as of late. But real quick here, Mark Sanchez, for a quarterback that in this game threw as many touchdown passes the past few games. Obviously, the Cardinals, it was a very ugly outing. The past 2 games, Mark Sanchez throwing as many touchdown passes as the multi-millionaire backup and the recently retired Fireman Ed, which is 0. Mark Sanchez, a very pedestrian, below-average quarterback that can't make the plays in his 4th year that we've seen almost every rookie come in and make plays in their very first game of their very first year. New York has a very interesting setup on their hands as Mark Sanchez is due to make $8.25 million next year. If you're the front office for New York, obviously Rex Ryan perhaps will be back next year, and this team might be able to make the postseason with a very easy schedule down the stretch. Do you keep Mark Sanchez on your roster also with 2 other quarterbacks that I believe are not the answer at that key position that any team needs to make the postseason, the quarterback position? Do you stick with Mark Sanchez, or do you take the $8.5 million cap penalty and go with perhaps a quarterback that can win and make the throws that Sanchez frankly can't?
Well, me personally, I don't think you do. I think you cut your losses and you move on. But, do I think that's what's going to happen? Probably not. I don't see them making that bold of a move because, even now, I think if they were going to do that, they wouldn't be playing him now because they're going to cut him. They're not, if they're going to cut him, they're going to cut him. They're not going to look around for trade options. I think they're trying to work through whatever these issues are. They know they have such a lackluster team. I think the Jets could walk right through airport security with the weapons they have right now because they don't really have any. It's just this team. There's just so many things wrong with it, and I think the most messed up thing about it is they're not really doing much to fix it.
This is a very under-talented team. Lack of receivers, no really dynamic players they've picked up in the draft. Against Jacksonville, they are a Chad Henne interception away from losing to perhaps the worst team in football. This is a very ugly situation that no one is really taking right now. Obviously, the Jets were signed out for the postseason, but I'm looking at the next few years as a team that will really self-destruct. Obviously, they're missing their primetime corner in Darrelle Revis. But this is a very under-talented squad in the Mark Sanchez-led New York Jets that might, frankly, make the postseason at 9-7, maybe even 8-8. They face the San Diego Chargers next weekend. And overall, in a very weak AFC, not many quarterbacks have really come into the fold. I want to real quick go to this hot topic, and we mentioned Robert Griffin really quick being as dynamic of a guy as possible, but I just want to real quick go into Andrew Luck. And have you been surprised, Phil, on how tremendous he's been? And overall, has America really lacked to notice how tremendous this guy is that might just set an NFL record? He's 2 pass attempts per game behind the NFL record for most pass attempts per game in a season. He has 41.3 currently. If there's any team that relies on a quarterback more than the Indianapolis Colts, let me know, because Andrew Luck has carried this team filled with misfits. 42 of these players were not a member of this squad last year. Indianapolis redid house, starting with their, obviously, head coach, Chuck Pagano, and they don't even have their head coach right now facing leukemia as well. Andrew Luck, no one expected him to be this good. Phil, what's your take on this?
Well, I think the biggest surprise with Andrew Luck's success so far is everyone thought he was going to be good, but is the difference between playing well and playing well enough to lead your teams to victory. RG3 earlier in the year, he would have good games, and, look at Cam Newton last year, he would light up the scoreboard, but it did not always translate into wins, because it takes a team to win games. You could have one guy go off, and it doesn't always translate. I think the biggest surprise is he has played so well that it has translated to victories. I think everyone expected him to do well, but to play well enough to make this team where they are now, almost a shoo-in for the playoffs right now, that's the most impressive and surprising part about it all.
He's had 6 game-winning or game-tying fourth-quarter comebacks and overtime comebacks, tied for an NFL record, the highest third-down completion percentage of any rookie quarterback. Also, he's set to pass Cam Newton as the most passing yards in any rookie quarterback in NFL history. Tremendous rookie season for Andrew Luck. Gotta feel proud of a guy taking first overall and the most humble guy you'll see in that Indianapolis locker room. Phil, who do you have for your Game Ball Week 14 edition? You have a very humble guy as well taking hold of those honors for this week.
Well, it means a lot that I can actually have this and being justified. This past week, a game that I really should have been at. I had plans at the beginning of the year to attend this game. The Eagles playing in Tampa Bay, only about an hour and a half from where I live in Daytona. But with the bad year they had, I had friends I was going to go with, didn't want to spend the money, so I did not make it to this game. But it would have been great to see the coming out party for Nick Foles, who had 381 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, including one to Jeremy Maclin, with 2 seconds left in the game to snap the Eagles' 8-game winning streak as they beat the Buccaneers 23-21. And Nick Foles, he didn't look like a rookie. A little interesting stat, anyone who watched this game, the pass that got them down to the 1-yard line with 16 seconds left in the game was a play that was not in the playbook. Nick Foles literally grabbed the board on the sideline and made up a play on the fly that got them down to the 1-yard line. And, stuff like that's just amazing. It's going to add to his legacy as it begins here in Philadelphia. So for me, Nick Foles for sure, Game Ball.
Obviously, very tremendous. Andy Reid, got to feel proud of a guy. 8-game losing streak. He might be out of a job for Philadelphia. He'll be picked up in 10 minutes. He's just one of those head coaches that a number of teams would love to have in Andy Reid.
Interestingly enough, they're talking about one of the teams that might pick him up in 10 minutes, if it so happens, is San Diego, and that could make for some very interesting situations.
Chip Kelly, he's not regarded as a NFL type of head coach. Not Chip Kelly, but Nick Saban. He's a guy that from Alabama, he's really resurrected that squad. Next year, he perhaps would make the jump to the NFL, reportedly, only if he is working for a guy, Michael Lombardi, that might make the jump also to general manager, reportedly. Those 2 college quarterbacks or head coaches are out the door. And despite San Diego going with a coordinator, Andy Reid's the best option. Very interesting, very intriguing type of headline there. I'd love to have Andy Reid being a member of our team that for the past few years, frankly, has not had the quarterback that can win. Nick Foles might be able to make that jump to the NFL. He perhaps will play, reportedly, the rest of the year, barring injury, as Michael Vick, even if he's healthy, will not be playing for the starting Philadelphia Eagles. Now, going to my Game Ball, can't give it to a guy that has resurrected a season more impressively than Adrian Peterson. He's on set for perhaps 2,000 yards and perhaps even the record set by Eric Dickerson of 2106 rushing yards in the NFL. He's certainly on pace to do that. 31 carries for 154 and 2 touchdowns today against a Chicago defense that was ranked 10th in the league rush against opposing running backs in the NFL. Very impressive for a guy that was 1 season away from season-ending knee surgery. Very impressive resurrection for Adrian Peterson. In my mind, the best running back in the NFL this season. A close second is Doug Martin. Very impressive mark for the Minnesota Vikings, Adrian Peterson. 1,600 yards on the year right now. Real quick, Phil, putting you on the spot, is Adrian Peterson a 2,000 rushing yards running back? Does he reach that double century mark? He needs 133 yards per game to go in his final 3 matchups.
Well, I think it's definitely a possibility if anybody can do it, he can. I think the most interesting thing with him this year, halfway through the year, people were saying, oh, he's a shoo-in for, Comeback Player of the Year award. He might not get that now, but the reason is he has gone past that and, was into the realm of MVP candidate. And, to go from a guy who we didn't know if he was going to play this year, and if he did, how effective he was going to be. And he is, one can argue he's playing as good a football as he ever has, which is very fortunate for the Vikings because they need him to do that, to stay competitive at this rate, because Christian Ponder has been going through some struggles. He's not playing as well as he could. Weapons like Percy Harvin being on injured reserve. He has their team on his back for sure. And here's a guy, very respectably is going to be in the MVP race.
Adrian Peterson, 1,600 yards rushing the football so far this year. Very interesting down the stretch if this running back can make his mark in the double century rushing yardage record. There's only 7 running backs that have that mark. Final 3 games of the NFL. Phil, final thoughts on a Week 14 that was, as New England with another touchdown, 35-7 now in the fourth quarter. That one's out of hand. A Week 14 that was, Phil. Very interesting matchups in the final 3 weeks.
Well, I got one more thing for everybody before I split here in a second. I posted this thing. I want everyone to take a look at it on Facebook, and I want your answer. It's a thing I'm gonna start doing once I get the proper research. It's called No Name, Just the Resume, and I'm gonna give the resume of a player and not put his name, and you tell me if this guy is worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the first one out here on the show. This guy, who will remain nameless, is a 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champion, tied for the most career interceptions, and the all-time leader of interceptions in the playoffs. Does this guy belong in the Hall of Fame? And I'll reveal who this resume belongs to next week on the show. So go ahead and jump on the Facebook NFL Goal Line with Nick and Phil and let me know if this resume is a Hall of Fame resume.
I think I know who it is, but we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys for joining us on another presentation of the NFL Goal Line with Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata. Real quick, I want to give a honorable mention for a team that obviously we don't give game balls the team performances, but perhaps as dominant of overall a dominant of a display for one team that I've seen in any week, and the NFL has seen in any week over the past few decades, seemingly. Obviously, Seattle really blew the door off the water over the Arizona Cardinals. Very impressive how up 45-0, the Seattle fan base, there is not a single empty seat in the Seattle stadium. I mean, there is home field advantage. And then there's
up 58-0. You're not leaving either. You're going to stay there and enjoy the whole thing. I applaud them for staying.
Well, if there's some teams, I don't want to mention San Diego in this, but if there's any team 58-0, wow. I mean, staying for the party, to say the least. But got to feel proud of a head coach that has progressed his team as well as I've seen any team in the National Football League. Obviously, very impressive mark. They have the number 5 seed in the NFC playoffs if it were to start today. Thank you guys for watching NFL Goal Line with Nick Rice, Phil Nunziata. Spreaker.com, in affiliation with National Sports, will give you our Facebook question of the week along with the no name, just the resume answer. Phil Nunziata posted it. Thank you guys for watching. Post your answers on Facebook.com. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, right here on Spreaker.com.
Have a good one, guys.